If you're looking into getting a pair of ANC headphones, then chances are you're probably looking into getting something from Bose. Now, both the Bose NC700s and Bose QC45s are great ANC headphones. However, they are very different from one another. They look, fit, and perform very differently. So, let's see which one's right for you. Now, regarding pricing, I kind of wish there was a larger delta between these two headphones. The QC45s retail for $330, whereas the NC700s will sometimes retail for $400 and other times retail for $380. Nonetheless, I feel more comfortable picking up the QC45s if they're on sale for $300 or less. But overall, if you want to pick either of these two headphones up, they'll be linked down below. And if you want to further support the channel, check out the merch shelf down below. I made some shirts and hoodies that look and feel great. And if you've been watching me for a while, you know I can be very particular. So I'll only set my name on something that I'm really proud of. Now first, let's talk about these cases. Now both of these headphones come included with decent hardshell cases that are going to have no problem keeping your headphones safe if you cram them into an overstuffed backpack. However, for my constant travelers, the QC45's case is a little smaller than the NC700s, specifically because the QC45s are completely collapsible, whereas the NC700s can only be laid down flat. Now this isn't a huge deal, but I thought I'd point it out. Nonetheless, both of these headphones come included with great cases. No complaints here. But now, let's talk about the headphones themselves. Design-wise, the NC700s have always been a little polarizing. Now, personally, I am over the NC700's design, but then there are the QC45s, which have a more traditional look to them. However, build quality-wise, the NC700s do feel a little more premium. Now, the NC700s have mostly plastic ear cups that slide up and down. From these mostly plastic ear cups, we then transition into the headband, which is mostly exposed stainless steel up top, and underneath, there's just a whole lot of padded silicone, which really does help when it comes to the comfort of these headphones. And once we make our way back down to the ear pads, the leatherette on these ear pads feels phenomenal. It's very smooth and it's very supple. But then there are the Bose QC45s, which also have great build quality, but they don't feel as premium as the NC700s. Their body is mostly made out of this composite material, and then we've got leatherette on both the headband and ear pads. Now, like I mentioned in the full review, the leatherette on the QC45s is decent, but it doesn't feel as luxurious as the leatherette on the NC700s, and it doesn't feel as good as the leatherette on their predecessors, the QC35s. But nonetheless, both of these headphones are very well built, but I am going to have to say the NC700s do feel a little more premium, whereas the QC45s feel a little more durable. But now let's talk about fit, because both of these headphones fit a little differently. For starters, when it comes to clamping force, both of these headphones are Big Head approved, shirts down below. However, the QC45s do have a little less clamping force than the NC700s. So if you're someone that really wants a looser fit on their headphones, maybe you've got a big head or you just like to wear hats, then you might want to go with the QC45s. But also, the earpads on the QC45s are a little more spacious than the earpads on the NC700s. Now, don't get me wrong, both of these headphones have a very spacious earpads, and neither of them are going to have any problem accommodating large ears or ears that stick out a lot. But I can't help but notice that the QC45s feel more spacious. But also, the earpads on the QC45s do a slightly better job of staying cool for longer because your earpads have less surface area coming in contact with your skin compared to the earpads found on the NC700s. And finally, there's their weight. Now, the NC700s weigh in at 264 grams, which is average for a pair of ANC headphones like these. So you forget that you have these headphones on when you're working at your desk, and they aren't super noticeable when you're walking around with them on. But then there are the QC45s, which weigh in at 235 grams, 29 grams less than the NC700s. And personally, I would categorize the QC45s as a pair of lightweight ANC headphones. Now, I know this 29 gram difference might not seem like much, but you really notice the difference when you're wearing these headphones. They're just even less noticeable than the NC700s, which is great. So overall, both of these headphones fit fine, and they should be able to accommodate everyone. But the QC45s are a little more comfortable. They have less clamping force, they're lighter, their earpads are a little more spacious, and their earpads stay a little cooler for a little longer. But now let's talk about tech specs. Regarding battery life, both of Bose's headphones are a little behind when compared to the rest of the competition. Now, the NC700s have an advertised battery life of 20 hours with their active noise cancellation turned on, which is fine, whereas the QC45s have an advertised battery life of 24 hours with their active noise cancellation turned on, which is a little better. Now, when it comes to charging these headphones, they both charge via a USB-C port, and this is actually a notable upgrade for the QC45s. And when it comes to fast charging, if you were to charge both of these headphones up for 15 minutes from a dead battery, the NC700s is going to get you 2 hours of playback time, whereas the QC45s is going to get you 3 hours of playback time. So overall, both of these headphones can hang, but I do feel that Bose does need to step it up a bit. Now, when it comes to connectivity, both of these headphones can be simultaneously connected to 2 devices at the same time, regardless of operating system. So you can easily hot swap from one device to another, which is always great for power users. And when it comes to performance, both of these headphones have zero latency across the board when watching movies or videos on your phone, whether you're an iPhone or an Android user. And when it comes to audio codecs, both of these headphones only have support for SBC and AAC. Now, SBC and AAC is going to be perfectly fine if you're streaming your music and if you're an iPhone user. However, a lot of other newer headphones these days are starting to come with support for higher quality audio codecs. Sony has LDAC, which they also license out to other manufacturers. And then there are other companies like Sennheiser and Bowers & Wilkins, which are very big fans of aptX. But just keep in mind, if you do want to take advantage of those higher quality audio codecs, you do have to be an Android user. However, if you want to, you can always just use a wired connection with both of these headphones because both of these headphones still have an audio jack, and they even come included with audio cables, which just sounds crazy, especially if you ask Apple. However, just keep in mind, both of these headphones are using 2.5mm audio jacks, and you also can't use their USB-C port as a wired connection like you can with some other headphones out there. But now let's talk about actually listening to music with these headphones. For starters, I gotta say that both of these headphones perform the same. Even though the NC700s are the more premium model here, they don't sound or perform any better than the QC45. And I've also got to stress that both of these headphones are going to be better suited for someone who likes a more neutral or vocals-focused EQ. If you're trying to physically feel your music, or if you want the bass on your headphones to rattle your head, then neither of these two headphones are going to do it for you. The bass on these headphones is mostly on the audible side. If you want your headphones to rattle your head, you're either going to be better off with the Sony 1000 XM4s or Sennheiser PXC 552s. However, the Sonys are going to rattle your head more than the Sennheisers. Now, both the QC45 and NC700 sound more open and have better instrument separation than the Sony 1000 XM4s, but neither of them sound as detailed as the Sennheisers. Now, even though I just said that both of these headphones sound and perform the same, they do have different stock EQs. With their stock EQ, both the NC700s and QC45s have the same emphasis on the vocals. However, the bass on the QC45s does like to cut in harder than the bass on the NC700s. But the key difference between these two headphones sound quality-wise is that the NC700s have an adjustable EQ. And I found that if you were to raise the bass on the NC700s to +3, they sound identical to the QC45s. Now, I think it's great and all that the NC700s have an adjustable EQ, but I do have to stress that even if you were to raise the bass on these headphones to 10, they're still not going to physically rattle your head, and honestly, they just end up sounding a little shallow. So overall, both of these headphones perform the same, and they're both better suited for someone who likes a neutral or vocals-focused EQ. But I am gonna have to say that the NC700s are the better option here when it comes to sound, just because they have a customizable EQ. And like I said in the full review, I feel that the reason the QC45s don't have an adjustable EQ is just because Bose wants to compel you to upgrade to the NC700s, because there's really no reason why the QC45s couldn't have an adjustable EQ. So hopefully, Bose adds it in a future firmware update. Now, when it comes to the MIDI controls on these headphones, this alone could be a deciding factor for some people. The NC700s have a touchpad, and this touchpad is easy enough to use and it's fairly accurate. Now, it's not perfect, but it's definitely not problematic. But then there are the QC45s, which are using physical buttons. And plainly said, physical buttons are just going to be more accurate. So overall, the touchpad on the NC700 is good, but if you don't want to have to deal with the touchpad on your headphones, then you can always go with the QC45s. However, I do have to point out that neither of these headphones have wear sensors, so they aren't going to automatically play or pause your music if you take your headphones off and put them back on. Now personally, I don't care for wear sensors on my headphones and I usually just turn that feature off, but I'm just pointing this out for the person that just absolutely needs to have all of the features. And when it comes to voice assistant integration, the NC700s have support for Google Assistant and Alexa, so you can make this button a dedicated voice assistant button if you want. And personally, I do think that voice assistant integration on your headphones is great, specifically if you're an Android user. Whereas the QC45s don't have voice assistant integration, so this button is strictly used for toggling between your ANC settings. But you can always activate your phone's default voice assistant by either pressing and holding on the QC45's multi-purpose button or by just pressing and holding on the NC700's touchpad. But now let's talk about the active noise cancellation on these headphones. Plainly said, the QC45s do in fact block out more noise than the NC700s. However, the NC700s have noticeably less cabin pressure than the QC45s, making them more comfortable. Cause with the QC45s, you will feel like you gotta pop your ears from time to time. But so that you can hear for yourself, we're gonna jump into an ANC test. Now first off, I decided to include the AirPod Max in this ANC test because they currently block out the most amount of noise here because they brutally go after constant low frequency sounds. However, the AirPod Max do have a lot of cabin pressure, more cabin pressure than the Bose QC45s. So for that reason, they aren't my preferred headphones when it comes to active noise cancellation. But like you may have just seen, overall, the QC45s block out more road noise and more chatter than the NC700s. But since they have more cabin pressure, they aren't as comfortable as the NC700s, which still block out an impressive amount of noise. Now everyone might not be as sensitive to cabin pressure, but I am. So by default, I do prefer the ANC on the NC700s. But one pet peeve that I do have about the QC45s is that you can't use them with their active noise cancellation completely turned off. You either got to use them with their active noise cancellation turned on or with their ambient mode turned on. And sometimes you do want to be able to use your headphones with their ANC completely turned off because number one, it does save on battery life. And I'm just guesstimating here. I think that if you could use the QC45s with their ANC turned off, you could maybe hit a 30-hour battery life. But also, sometimes your music does sound better with the ANC turned off, and sometimes you just want to take a break from the cabin pressure on your headphones, which is especially true with the QC45s. So Bose, please, in the next firmware update, can we get a simple off mode, but also don't break my headphones with your next firmware updates because you are really good at that. But next up, let's talk about the ambient mode on these headphones. Now, I think it's great and all that the QC45s have an ambient mode, but I feel this ambient mode pales in comparison to the ambient mode found on the NC700s. For starters, you can adjust how much noise the NC700s let in, whereas the QC45s is just one set amount. And again, this is something that I feel Bose left out of the QC45s just to compel you to upgrade to the NC700s. But more importantly, the ambient mode on the NC700s sounds way more natural, and their microphone array does a much better job of blocking out wind noise when walking outdoors. Whereas with the QC45s, their microphone array picks up a noticeable amount of wind noise, and this ambient mode just mostly lets in noise pollution. I find it very hard to understand what people are saying, even when they're talking directly at you. So, plainly said, the NC700s have the superior ambient mode here, and I feel that the ambient mode on a pair of headphones is just as important as their active noise cancellation. And finally, the NC700s have a conversation mode where if you press and hold this button, the headphones will automatically lower the volume of your music and pump in all of the ambient sound around you, so that you can quickly talk to someone without having to take your headphones off, like this. So yeah, this is a useful little feature, especially when you're flying, and this is another feature that Bose just didn't add to the QC45s, just because. But finally, here's the microphone test. Now overall, both of these headphones have decent sounding microphones on them for phone calls. And both the QC45s and NC700s have very similar sounding microphones on them. But I can't help but feel that the Bose QC35s have a slightly better performing microphone than these other two headphones. While in a quiet room, the QC35s do a much better job of focusing on my voice. But the real difference is when it comes to blocking out noise pollution. Now, right now, you can definitely hear some road noise in the background, but my voice is front and center. Whereas with the QC45s, even though you can hear my voice pretty well, it doesn't sound as defined as with the QC35s. My voice does sound a little shallow and a little hollow. And the same thing can be said about the Bose NC700s. Yeah, you can hear my voice, but it does sound a little shallow and hollow. And the same thing can be said about chatter. Yeah, you can hear my voice, but it's not super clear, and I can't help but feel that there's like a little bit of static in the background when I'm talking. And the Bose QC45s sound very similar to the NC700s under the same circumstances. Whereas with the QC35s, my voice is much more prominent. So even though both the QC45s and NC700s have good sounding microphones on them, I am going to have to say that their predecessors have the slightly better performing microphone here. But with all that being said, both the Bose NC700s and Bose QC45s are good pairs of ANC headphones to consider. However, if you want all of the features that you'd expect from a pair of premium ANC headphones today, I say that you have to go with the Bose NC700s. And personally, I do consider the Bose QC45s as a pair of premium ANC headphones, not mid-tier. I just can't help but feel that Bose is deliberately holding features back from the QC45s to compel you to upgrade. However, the QC45s are the more comfortable headphones here, and that alone could be a deciding factor for some people. The QC45s have less clamping force, more spacious ear pads, and they're a little lighter as well. I just hope that these headphones get some firmware updates that will unlock their full potential. If you made it this far, I guess you enjoyed the video, so hit that like button and get subscribed. If you want to pick any of these products up, they'll be linked down below. And if you want to further support the channel, check out the merch. I've made some shirts and hoodies that look and feel great.